I've noticed that some of the greatest wisdom have been imparted by masters of enlightenment, and usually we find their wisdom neatly tucked away in parables, songs, and poetry. Such wisdom somehow, in its simplicity, allows for deep reflection. The Dhammapada has that same effect. Welcome, I am Daisy, your hostess. I am reading Thomas Cleary's translation of the Dhammapada in this video, originally written in Pali, dating back to at least the 1st century B.C.E, before Christ. We are so fortunate to have people who take the time to learn other languages and translate these ancient works, and in doing so, allows us a window into the past. The Dhammapada is a collection of 423 verses spoken by Gautama Buddha himself to his disciples. It is said to be an anthology of moral precepts and maxims, divided in 26 chapters under different headings such as thought, flowers, old age, self, happiness, pleasure, anger, etc. Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha, could have chosen to rule his father's kingdom, but his father could not cover the sun with his hand, as he was trying to keep his son isolated from the world, unawares of human plight and suffering. After reading Gautama Buddha's history, I believe, despite his father's good intent on shielding his son from witnessing the suffering of humanity, while they themselves lived in opulence, but it was that lie that created irreparable damage, and part of the catalyst that motivated Siddhartha Gautama to choose the path he did, and in that selfless act carved a path for those seeking deeper answers to life's purpose. Years after his death, his wisdom, wrapped in Buddhism, is now the world's 4th largest religion. If you want to jump onto the time machine back to 1st century BCE, be my guest. There's a jump link that will help you travel in time, and you can meet up with the Buddha himself under the Bodhi tree as he continues sharing his wisdom. If you missed the first few verses, please visit my book playlist and grab them there. In the meantime, I'll stay here and I'm going to share some of my findings. First, let me say I am not a scholar, and this information that I'm sharing is based from my research, so feel free to check out the sources in the description of this video. I've left plenty links there. In traveling back in time to ancient India, I learned that circumstances had it that folks in India lived under the caste system, in which is believed to have begun around 1500 BC, when the Aryans arrived in India. It was they who established the caste system for the purpose of enforcing social control in India. And unfortunately, even when the British colonized over there, they actually made it even more rigid. But anyway, the word Aryan apparently has led to much misunderstanding of the term's origins and meaning, resulting in concepts related to a supposed Aryan race. Prior to that misunderstanding, many scholars state that the Aryan were Central Asian steppe pastoralists, also known as herders, who arrived in India between roughly 2000 BCE and 1500 BCE, and they brought Indo-European languages to the subcontinent. Well, before I trail on to another point, I want to add that the Indian Constitution officially abolished the caste system in 1950. That's not long ago. Unfortunately, it still exists in practice in many parts of India, even though it's not legally enforced. Caste identity continues to influence economic, political, cultural, and social life and opportunities for many people there. It was created to kind of put a social stratification system or division between people, putting them into groups with predetermined roles and responsibilities, with the aim of maintaining social order while justifying this structure through religious beliefs, a concept of varna, which that means social classes. And that was originated during the Vedic period, which lasted from approximately 1750 to 500 BCE. And that era was really known for its composition of the Vedas, which is something I'd like to bring to the channel someday. And that is one of the oldest Hindu scriptures. Now, most of its development and codification are seen in texts like the Manusmriti, also known as the Manava Dharmasastra, or the Laws of Manu, which is one of the many legal texts and constitutions of Hinduism, dated around 1250 BCE. And according to the Matsya Purana, which Purana means a collection of Hindu texts containing myths, legends, information about Hindu gods and the creation of the world, pretty much like, I would say, the Bible with the different books and songs by different authors. It is in the Matsya Purana where they mention that sage Manu was the first man and the first human created by God. So, going back to the basic caste system, it was intended to create a stable and functional society where everyone knew their place and duties within the community, and each had to live their karma. One could not mingle with the other. Each had its own sets of rules. So it is under this system that Gautama comes into the world. So having set that stage, come, join me. Let's time travel and sit down under the Bodhi tree with the others as I turn the page. 19. The righteous. This chapter contrasts definitions of worth based on superficial appearances and conventional performances with definitions of worth based on the inner realities of being and the ennoblement of character. 1. One who forces his way to gain is not righteous. One is sagacious when one has determined both what is beneficial and what is not. 2. One who guides others without force, righteously and equitably, is called a guardian of the teaching, wise and just. Note: this aphorism illustrates essential aspects of the incompatibility of authoritarianism with authentically effective Buddhist education. End note. 3. One is not wise just because one talks a lot. One who is calm, free from hostility, and without fear is said to be sagacious. 4. One is not a bearer of the teaching just because one talks a lot. One who sees the teaching bodily, even though little learned, one who does not neglect the teaching, is indeed a bearer of the teaching. 5. One is not an elder because one's hair has gone gray. Though ripe of age, it may be said one has grown old in vain. 6. One in whom are truth, justice, nonviolence, restraint, and control is indeed purged of impurity, wise, then one is called an elder. 7. Not merely by talking, nor by beauty or appearance, does an envious, avaricious cheat become fair. 8. The one from whom that is extirpated, totally uprooted, the wise one freed from corruption, is the one who is called fair. 9. One who is undisciplined and speaks untruth is not an ascetic by virtue of having a shaven head. How can one full of desire and acquisitiveness be an ascetic? 10. But one who stills all evils, great and small, is called an ascetic, because of having stilled all evils. 11. One is not a mendicant just because of begging from others. One is a mendicant when one has accepted the whole truth, not until then. 12. One who is chaste, having transcended both good and evil, and one who acts with consideration in the world, that one is called a mendicant. 13 through 14. One who is deluded and ignorant does not become a sage by silence, but the sage is the wise one who, holding the scale, takes to that which is best. 15. One who harms living beings is not ennobled. One who is harmless to all living beings is called noble. 16 through 17. Not merely by rules of conduct and religious observances, nor by much learning either, nor even by attainment of concentration, nor by sleeping alone, do I reach the happiness of freedom, to which no worldlings attain. If you have not put an end to compulsions, nurse your faith. Note: aphorisms 3 through 17 reiterate in different ways the principle that one should look beyond superficial appearances and labels to see real inner qualities. They also demonstrate that the ritual, externals, and performances of monasteries are not spiritually essential to Buddhist practice. End note. End of section. Section 20. The Path. This chapter outlines the way to purification of mind and attainment of inner peace taught by Buddha. Special emphasis is placed on the idea that the Buddha only shows the way, and that the actual application is an individual choice and responsibility that can be taken up only by free will. The path is not fostered by coercive authoritarian measures, but by first-hand recognition of the truths underlying the path. 1. The Eightfold is the best of the paths. The Four Statements are the best of truths. Dispassion is the best of principles. Seers are the best of humans. Note: for the Eightfold Path and Four Truths, see notes above on 14:10 through 14. End note. 2. This is the path. There is no other conducive to purification of vision. You should follow this one, for it throws off the killer. Note: the killer refers to delusion or bedevilment, which kills the life of wisdom. End note. 3. Following this path, you will put an end to your misery. I declared the path after having understood how to relieve pain. 4. You must make the effort. The Buddhas just tell you how. The contemplatives who follow the path are free from the bonds of the killer. Note: the relationship between a guide and a seeker is not one of emotional, intellectual, or institutional dependency. No amount of help can do for us what we need to do for ourselves. End note. 5. When one sees by insight that all conditioned states are transitory, one then wearies of misery. This is the path to purity. 6. When one sees by insight that all conditioned states are miserable, one then wearies of misery. This is the path to purity. Note: in common parlance among Westerners, the first truth has often been exaggerated into the statement that life is suffering. The critical issue is bondage to conditioned states and liberation from this bondage. Far from being pessimistic, as has so often been said in respect to overstatement of the first truth, Buddhism is the epitome of optimism, believing that humanity can rise, both individually and collectively, above its folly, greed, and aggression. End note. 7. When one sees by insight that all things are selfless, then one wearies of misery. This is the path to purity. Note: it is noteworthy that the Dhammapada makes no direct reference to the selflessness of persons, speaking only of the selflessness of things. This is in accord with the view of the greater journey, in which the selflessness of persons is realized as a positive fact of unlimited potential based on the selflessness of all phenomena. In Buddhist yoga, the inner aspect of the teaching, the real characteristic of things, is referred to as the selflessness of things in suchness. End of note. 8. The idler who does not arise when it is time to arise, who is full of sloth though young and strong, who is lazy and weak in thought and mind, does not find the path to insight. Note: those who wish to transcend the world by thoughtless meditation may reach any degree of thoughtlessness, but they will not reach completion that way. They do not even reach insight, as this aphorism explains. Most of all, they do not see through their own thoughtlessness. These are the people who get caught by pretentious gurus. Some of them become pretentious gurus themselves. End note. 9. Always careful in speech and restrained in mind. One should not do wrong with the body. One should purify these 3 ways of action and attain the path taught by the seers. 10. Wisdom arises through effort. Wisdom disappears through lack of effort. Knowing this twofold path of growth and decline, one should arrange oneself such that wisdom increases. Note: one should arrange oneself such that wisdom increases. This is one of the simplest yet most sophisticated exercises. How to arrange the items of one's life, including one's thoughts and feelings, conservations and activities, such that they yield the maximum insight and understanding of life itself and the minimum unnecessary distraction and vexation. Among the problems people seem to experience in the process of self-renewal is to imagine they need to remove or replace what they only need rearrange, and imagine they need only rearrange what they need to remove or replace. End of note. 11. Cut down the forest, not the tree. Danger comes from the forest. Having cut down the forest and craving as well, you will attain nirvana. Note: according to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the tree represents the body. The forest is the thicket of thoughts. The classical Zen master Baizhang said, the forest symbolizes mind. The tree symbolizes the body. Fear is aroused because of talk about the forest, so it is said, chop down the forest, not the tree. This underscores the point that Buddhist abstinence and renunciation do not mean torturing the body, but rather clearing the mind. End note. 12. As long as man's desire for women, however little, is not cut through, so long is his mind attached, like a suckling calf to its mother. Note: superficial interpreters believe this means it is impossible for enlightened people to share loving feelings and sensual enjoyment as well as they can share sorrow and pain. Paradoxically, even those who adopt this interpretation often seem to disbelieve in detachment, with the result that there are married monks fathering children supported by celibate workers, and lay people dogmatically worrying about repressing or indulging their sensuality instead of transforming their experience of it. End note. 13. Uproot self-love as you would an autumn lily by hand. Cherish the path to peace, to nirvana taught by the felicitous one. Note: the felicitous one, Sugata, gone to felicity, is one of the standard descriptive epithets of a Buddha. 14. I will live here during the rainy season, here, in winter and summer. So thinks the fool, unaware of the obstacle. Note: the classical Zen master Yun Men said, don't waste time traveling through the countryside, spending a winter here and a summer there, enjoying the scenery, whatever captivates you, casting in your lot wherever there are a lot of meals provided. Ouch, ouch. In planning for that one sack of rice, you have lost a half year's provisions. If you go on pilgrimage like this, what benefit will there be? End note. 15. A man whose mind is obsessed with children and chattels is carried away by death like a sleeping village by a flood. 16. Children are no protection, nor father, nor yet kin. There is no refuge in relatives for one overtaken by death. 17. Realizing the meaning of this, the wise one guarded in conduct should quickly clear the path that goes to nirvana. Note: aphorisms 15 to 17 do not mean we should abandon our children and desert our families and homes, but that we should abandon our subjective obsessions about them and deal with people and things objectively. Above all, not expecting their love and affection to absolve us of our own responsibilities, and realizing our own love and affection for them does not remove the responsibility of their own consciousness and their own journey from the shoulders of their own experience. People may help each other, but they cannot live each other's lives for them. The wandering Pure Land Buddhist Saint Ipen said, "There are 3 types of person who practice remembrance of Buddha. Those of the highest faculties attain rebirth, even while being married householders with children, by not being obsessive. Those of middling faculties may give up spouses and children, but still have places to live, food and clothing. Yet, by not being obsessive, they do obtain rebirth. Those of lowest faculties attain rebirth by relinquishing everything. I act as I do because I am of the lowest faculties, and I am sure I would cling to things at the moment of death, and thus fail to be reborn if I did not give up everything." When he was challenged by someone who pointed out that his explanation seemed to differ from that of a certain scripture, the saint explained, "All Buddhist teachings deal with states of mind, not external appearances. Leaving home and giving up ambitions mentally, not sticking obsessively to anything, is considered characteristic of the higher sort." End note. End of section. Section 21. Miscellany. As the title indicates, this chapter deals with a number of topics. The aphorisms collected here generally concern seeing beyond limited temporary pleasures to ultimate happiness, directing thought to the causes of bondage and freedom, and awakening the mind to reality. 1. If by giving up limited pleasures one sees far-reaching happiness, the wise one leaves aside limited pleasures, looking to far-reaching happiness. 2. One who seeks his own pleasure by means that inflict suffering on others, tangled up in enmity, is not freed from hatred. Note: the principles stated in aphorisms 1 and 2 are also successfully applied in the fields of business and diplomacy. End note. 3. If they neglect what should be done and do what should not be done, compulsions increase in the arrogant and careless. 4. But in the mindful and discerning, whose consciousness is alert and always focused on the body, who do not attend to what is not to be done, persevering in what should be done, compulsions come to an end. No. Focus on the body has 3 stages. In the lesser journey, the focus is on transitoriness, mortality, and the need for constant cleaning and maintenance. In the greater journey, the focus is on space-like ethereality. In the Tantra, or fundamental continuity, focus is on purity. End note. 5. Killing mother and father and 2 warrior kings. Killing a kingdom with all its subject, the priestly one goes untroubled. Note: mother and father stand for greed and conceit. The two warrior kings are grasping and rejecting. The kingdom, with all its subject, is the totality of the individual's experience of life in the domain of conditioned existence. End note. 6. Killing mother and father, the two learned kings. Killing 5 eminent men, the priestly one goes untroubled. Note. The two learned kings are notions of eternalism and nihilism. The 5 eminent men are passion, rage, stupefaction, excitation, followed by regret and doubt. End note. 7. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on the enlightened one day and night. 8. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on the teaching day and night. 9. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on the community day and night. 10. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on the body day and night. 11. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on harmlessness day and night. 12. Those who hear Gautama are always wide awake, their thought on cultivation day and night. Note, those who hear Gautama means those who follow Gautama Buddha's teaching, not worshippers of Buddha as a Lord. End note. 13. Homes are miserable, hard to leave, hard to enjoy, hard to live in. Living with the uncongenial is miserable. The vagrant is beset by misery. So let no one become a vagrant. Let no one be dogged by misery. Note. Homes symbolize psychological holdings acquired through habit and conditioning. End note. 14. The faithful one, perfect in conduct, to whom are granted fame and prosperity, is honored in every place. 15. Good people shine from afar, like the snowy mountains. Those who are no good are not seen here, like arrows shot in the night. 16. Sitting alone, sleeping alone, acting alone. Let the diligent one enjoy the forest, taming the self alone. End of section. Section 22. Hell. This chapter assembles aphorisms dealing specifically with the nature of habitual attitudes and behaviors that lead to the worst possible results. These roads to hell, furthermore, are not only mundane profanities, but also include superficial and hypocritical religious vocations and observances. Extreme asceticism or mortification, shunning what need not be avoided, and similar prejudices of judgment and action are specially presented as warnings to those inclined to zealotry in the name of spirituality. 1. One who speaks untruth goes to hell, as does one who claims not to have done what he has in fact done. Both become equal after death, people of base deeds in the hereafter. 2. Many who wear the saffron robe are evil and unrestrained. Evildoers go to hell by their evil deeds. 3. It is better for an unethical and unrestrained person to swallow a red-hot iron ball than to consume food obtained from the people. Note, the idea that the monks were actually the moral or spiritual elite of Buddhism does not square with what we know of actual history, as evidenced, for example, in aphorism like 2 and 3. The point of this observation is not to demean real monks, but to illustrate the fallacy of a contemporary tendency among some Western Buddhists to demean and even abandon the scriptural teachings themselves because of the failures of some of those persons and groups who claim to represent a select community upholding the teachings. The irony, And the fallacy of this tendency is that the very same Western groups retain the very same elements that breed corruption, such as authoritarian and competitive structures, while thinking they have purged themselves of medieval elements by rejecting the classical teachings. If, in contrast, those who claimed to be teachers and those who claimed to be Buddhist communities were examined in the light of the Dharma, the teaching that is itself considered a permanent Dharmakaya or body of Buddha, much less confusion about authority and authenticity of people or practices would prevail among those attempting to view and apply Buddhism from the point of view of an imitative, quasi-oriental devotional cult. An unfortunate complication is the use of mistranslated and misinterpreted materials by inauthentic teachers, making it more difficult to see the otherwise obvious contradictions. Gautama Buddha himself recommended that people study reality carefully and thoughtfully. End of note. 4. A heedless man who courts another's wife gets into 4 states: degradation, inability to sleep peacefully, blame, and hell. 5. Degradation, an evil way of life, the little enjoyment of the fearful by the fearful, and the heavy penalty decreed by the ruler. For these reasons, a man should not court another's wife. 6. Just as a blade of grass wrongly grasped cuts into the hand, asceticism wrongly held to drags one into hell. Note: far from reducing selfishness, the asceticism of the selfish increases egocentrism and conceit. The I Ching says regulation is successful, but painful regulation is not to be held to. End note. 7. An act carelessly performed, a religious observance adulterated with worldly passion, chastity practiced with hesitation, these have no great results. Note: these aphorisms invite careful reflection. End note. 8. If something is to be done, do it with vigor. A careless renunciant scatters more dust. Note: a careless renunciant scatters more dust in the sense that an escapist causes more trouble by escapism than the original trouble that was there to begin with. End note. 9. Not doing anything is better than doing evil. Evil doing causes remorse later on. Better than doing just anything is doing something good, a deed one will not regret. 10. As a frontier city is guarded inside and out, so should you guard yourself. Do not let even a moment slip by, for those who let the moment slip by grieve when they have been consigned to hell. 11. They are ashamed of what is not shameful, and not ashamed of what is shameful. People who take on false views go to an evil state. Note: Mencius said that the purpose of shame is to enable us to reach a point where we can be unashamed. End note. 12. Seeing danger in what is not dangerous, seeing no danger in what is dangerous, people who take on false views go to an evil state. Note: these aphorisms indirectly urge the thinker to examine his or her ideas of what is shameful and or dangerous, what is to be avoided and what need not be avoided. This is not a superficial exercise in formulation of dogmatic policy or pious hopes, but an exercise in ongoing vigilance and examination of factual patterns. End note. 13. Thinking that what need not be avoided should be shunned. Seeing no need to avoid what should be shunned, people who take on false views go to an evil state. 14. Knowing what is to be shunned is to be avoided, knowing what need not be avoided need not be shunned. People who accept right views go to a good state. End of section. Section 23. The Elephant. This chapter centers around different associations of the elephant as a symbol of the self. One who has accomplished self-mastery is likened to a tamed elephant, while the unruly self is likened to an elephant in rut. This chapter conveys the mood of the traveler on the path and emphasizes specific criteria for choosing associates and companions on the way. 1. I will endure abusive words like the elephant in battle endures the arrow shot from the bow, for many people are ill-behaved. 2. They lead a tamed elephant into battle. A king mounts a tamed elephant. The tamed one is the best of human beings, the one who endures abusive words. 3. Excellent are mules that are tamed, horses of good breed, and the mighty bull elephant. Even better is one whose self is tamed. 4. For it is not by these vehicles that one may go to the place of inaccessibility, where the tamed one goes, with self-mastery by virtue of being tamed. 5. The elephant called guardian of treasure is hard to control when in rut. It does not eat any food when bound. The elephant longs for the elephant grove. 6. The fool who becomes a sluggard and a glutton, tossing and turning in sleep, like a fat fodder-fed hog, enters the womb again and again. Note, the enter the womb again and again means to enter into a matrix of dependency again and again by the inertia of subconscious habits. End note. 7. This mind used to roam about where it wished, where it wanted, where it pleased. Now I will control it judiciously, as the holder of the hook controls an elephant in rut. 8. Take pleasure in vigilance. Guard your own mind. Extricate yourself from the way to misery, as you would an elephant sunk in the mud. 9. If you find a prudent companion, a wise associate who leads a good life, having overcome all troubles, travel with that one, uplifted and aware. 10. If you do not find a prudent companion, a wise associate leading a good life, then travel alone, like a king abandoning a domain he has conquered, like an elephant roaming the forest. 11. It is better to walk alone. There is no companionship with a fool. Walk alone, like an elephant in the forest, with few desires, doing no evil. Note, here in aphorisms 9 through 11 are more guidelines for those who seek teachers and companions. End note. 12. Companionship is pleasant when a need arises. Satisfaction is pleasant when it is mutual. Virtue is pleasant at the end of life. Pleasant is relinquishment of all misery. 13. Pleasant is motherliness in the world, and fatherliness is pleasant. Pleasant is religiousness in the world, and priestliness is pleasant. 14. Pleasant is morality that lasts to old age. Pleasant is faith well-founded. Pleasant is attainment of insight. Pleasant is avoidance of evil. Note, aphorisms 12 through 14 are not definitions of a dogma of rejection or negation, but of the practice of discerning the relative value of things in their places, considered in the context of the totality of life and death. End note. End of section. Meet me at the next video where we continue with the Dhammapada, the Buddha's teachings. Please do hit like, share, and subscribe.